Welcome to Triple Threat, the podcast with Jamel President, where it's good news and good vibes all the time, baby.
When we left Portugal to come play with you in your system, Jamel, it was the best thing for Shane because you pushed him to do other things outside his box.
You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Jamel President and on Twitter at President Jamel. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast as I'll be bringing you a new interview every month. Hey, what's up, guys? Coming up next, we got a good friend, Danny Johnson from Morganton, North Carolina. Danny and I became good friends when he came to the College of Charleston from Clemson. And we had a really, really great run with those great additions at the college back in 97, I would think. But in our conversation, we talked a lot about the transition of the sport in basketball, how the European style of play has invaded the U.S. style of play, and how kids and coaches need to adapt to that certain type of development. So very interesting conversation, and I want you guys to hear all about it. All right, Danny Johnson coming right up. We're gonna get right into it, man. I know you're busy. I'm not gonna waste too much of your time. I appreciate you coming on. I know you did a lot with DAE TV too, so I appreciate you. And this podcast, our second season, we just tried to, talk to former student athletes that did it and did it big. You know what I'm saying, and live their lives through sports. And in our conversation, we'll touch base on some of the things just from, high school, middle school, college, professional career. And so forth. So again, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, no problem.
So let's get into it. Let's go back to Morganton. Let's go back to Morganton. And we like to talk to our guests about just like the Parks and Rec. What struck you into the sports? I know you was a 3-sport athlete. You played you're very, very athletic, played all sports. What started that coming out into the rec departments? Like, who was your biggest motivator? And tell us how that kind of really started your interest in sports.
Yeah, I think it started off like most of us do, my mother finding something to put me in, what I mean, to get rid of some of that energy that I had,
right.
Being a young man. And so she just wanted me to channel that in a way that was positive. Sometimes energy can go either way. And so I think she just wanted me to channel it into something that I could find purpose in and something I would attach to. So it really was my parents just signing me up for local things and obviously getting me to try everything that was kind of unique at the time.
I got you. So what were some of the things, like, 'cause I know you played basketball, football, what was your biggest interest at that time, or all sports interested? And what was the structure? Because a lot of you being a major good athlete, that structure had to come from some place, because you can't just go on with that type of knowledge of how to play. How was the structure system in the rec department?
Back then, this is revealing of my age a little bit, I guess. But I'm born of a really athletic family in general. You know a little bit about that. So just competing with the guys in my neighborhood and my relatives, man. That was, fortunately for me, that was enough to take me far because they were so good in their own right. And as far as the rec went, my first sport was soccer, I believe, because it's the youngest one you could sign up for.
Right.
And so I got into that right away, man, and just loved it. Just loved being around other people, loved being a leader, loved winning. Looking back, I love losing, because it pushed me. It pushed me. So, the rec just provided that, opportunity for us that don't have the money to get on these travel teams and private teams and any of that. So,
Right.
that was monetarily, that's what we could do where I was from. And my parents just made the sacrifice. And, I laugh now thinking back, but they would drop me off in the summers. They would drop me off 7 a.m. and then come pick me up at like 2 or 3 in the afternoon.
For
And I
sure.
would do swimming, tennis,
Mm,
baseball, soccer. I would do it all day. And, the heat didn't matter. I don't know if you
right.
remember the days when the heat didn't matter, as long as you stay hydrated. And it kind of shaped me, not just in sports, but socially too, just as meeting a whole bunch of different type of people, hanging out with different folks.
Right. And it sounded like the program had to be solid in order to be able to, hold those kids' attention and provide those quality sports for that period of time. So, kudos for those departments. And that's why I wanted to bring a lot of attention to of the development and start in the ground system of these athletes coming up. You have to have a good supporting rec department, an early age of development in order for things to, evolve later on in life. So take us, here's the Danny Johnson in rec school, middle school. And of course, you watching high school games, you see things happen, and you thinking about being that guy one day. When did that interest turn on? What grade level? Because, back then or now, kids could have played, varsity in seventh grade per se. That's when, JV started. So give us a little feedback
Right.
from, JV and when it started, and take us through just a little bit about up until your sophomore year, a little bit.
Yeah, for us, we had a junior high system. So junior high was 7th through 9th, and high school was 10th through 12th. So a little different than the typical middle school program.
Didn't know that.
But yeah, so I never played JV anything, to be so honest. I got to high school, and I laugh with my kids now looking back on it, but it lets you know about who pays attention and what areas worry about feeder systems. What I mean by that is I never been to a tryout, right? Like the kids are like, how you never been to a
For
tryout
sure,
before?
for
And I was
sure.
like, I think they just assumed that I was going to be on the teams, as a
Right.
varsity player and sophomore. So I didn't go through that part of it. But what I did go through was the expectations. So, I mean, my high school, I have the winningest high school coach in North Carolina history. In North Carolina, basketball is number one. It's not even close, like it's the premier sport in the state. So watching that growing up, like going to the basketball games in my hometown was like man. It was like the NBA,
Exactly.
like it was standing room only, thousands of people, the energy, small town, that's what people latch to. They don't have anything else.
Exactly.
So it was a lot, it was excitement, the energy. And I just remember sitting in the stands, just thinking to myself, like one day I'm gonna be out there. One day I'm gonna be that guy. One day I'm gonna be that guy. They're the cheering or booing. And I don't know which one it's gonna be. It's gonna change every day, but I'm willing to be that guy, and I wanted to be that guy. So I think that's when it started, just kind of going to the games and watching from the sidelines as a youth.
Right. And so what were some of the rivalries, because, talking to BJ and talking to Mel, just all the athletes, all the guests that we have, it's always that rivalry coming up where, yeah, that guy you were looking, that team you was going to watch play, there was a guy on that team that, hey, look, man, I think he's nice. I think he's good to go. But it also was that guy on your grade level that you had to go against. Talk about the rivalry in some situations where you had to break that. You had to really show your alpha stance.
Yeah, I mean, the area I grew up in, we had a rival for a short period, McDowell County. They had a couple Division I players on their team, but that didn't last. Like where I'm at in North Carolina, it's not the greatest, even though you play at the highest level. What would you had to break through for us was going through the cities. So getting through Charlotte, getting through Greensboro, getting through Raleigh. That was the breakthrough that my high school struggled with a little bit because we weren't playing those games on a regular basis. We were just piecemealing them during the year. So when it came playoff time, it was very difficult to get through. And plus, Charlotte at that time had the school choice thing going on before that was a thing. So they were loading up. So like a West Charlotte would have 5 Power 5 dudes on the same team. So
interesting.
We didn't have that luxury. Yeah, we didn't have that luxury. So we knew breaking that threshold would have to come from building it with what we had. We wasn't gonna bring anybody in or nothing. We just had to do it with what we had. And so that was really the rivalry. I wouldn't say we had a crosstown rivalry or anything like that.
Right.
But it was breaking through those major cities to win the big championship.
Right. So as you come in, as a freshman, sophomore, when did it click? Because again, talking to the Aaron Lucases and talking to those guys, you start getting looks as your freshman, sophomore year, and when things started to really get serious. How was your work ethic, at the beginning of your career? Did you have a serious work ethic? And when did it click? When you started getting like some invite to camps, and when you was like, oh, this is about to start happening?
I'm trying to think about the time. I can remember a specific game. My sophomore year, I wasn't getting to play a lot, and I shouldn't have. There were guys that were better than me. They were older, more mature, stronger, all those things. But I loved to play basketball. I just loved to play. So we played against that crosstown rival, McDowell, and I got a few minutes. I think I ended up getting 6-7 minutes or whatever. That was huge back then because sophomores just didn't play on the varsity team. And I scored like 4 points, 5 points, and I thought I won the world championship, man. You know what I mean? And you couldn't tell me nothing after that game, and we won. And I think that was the moment when I realized, being on the floor, I was like, I'm not as big and strong as them yet, but I can feel myself playing to that level of above if I keep working. So I think that specific game was the one where I felt like I belonged, so to speak.
For sure. But how was your work ethic? Was it naturally talented? Because that 6'3" to jump out the gym that can shoot it, you got natural, you was able to sustain because you had natural ability, but you also got to water the soil. Like, how was your work ethic in let's say starting like 9th and 10th grade in high school?
To be completely honest, not very good. The only thing that held me down was I love to play basketball. Right. I love to play pickup. I love to play run. I'd play a game anywhere. Where I didn't know, and this is just coming from a small town, different generation, I didn't understand the importance of individual drills and individual workouts and the weight room. At that time, it hadn't quite caught on the way it is now. And so I was way behind when it came to individual development. And you're right. Being a natural athlete helped me kind of weather that storm a little bit, because I was behind others in bigger cities and stuff who were getting that kind of stuff. So, I was just fortunate, man, to be honest. I was just fortunate to be around a family and friends who were just super duper good athletes anyway. And just because of that, playing against them every day in my backyard, at the park, wherever, really prepared me. It wasn't the individual stuff like you have to have now. Now, those things are necessary to be successful. But back then, if you had enough going in your favor, you could kind of get through it.
And that's what I wanted to touch base on, and why it's so crucial that athletes aren't, that's the margin that they're missing, because, we don't have, current pioneers that's saying, hey, look, these are the things that's important in order to get to this certain level. You know what I mean? Yeah, you have a lot of support system once you get to the collegiate level, but everybody doesn't get to the collegiate level without the hard work. Like you said, you weather the storm because your natural ability. But what if a kid don't have the natural ability, to have the knowledge of how to work and how important it is to work? They can get through the cracks by hard work and just be just as successful in the sport. And that's the things we try to drive home about the importance of hard work and development and doing those things prior to getting to college. So as your sophomore year ending, you go into your junior year, because I know you talk about the recruitment. Jump to the junior, senior year, when you first got your letter, you still got recruiting. You're like, look, shit, I'm about to be a collegiate athlete. And then we'll get into the recruitment wars and when you made your final decision. But take us back a little bit. Junior. So
going into my junior year, we lost a lot of seniors, really good players, been around for a while. So I kind of saw it as my time. Me and another guy who moved up with me, we saw our opportunity. So, we started like our confidence was high because we've been playing in practice every day. I don't think kids understand that like sometimes your situation doesn't dictate you play right then and there, but it's better for you in the long run. And I
sure.
don't think kids understand that today. Like sometimes you have to sit and wait because it's good for you to see it and before you do it. And that's a hard thing to teach a young kid, because they're so anxious and want to get out there. But, just by default, I had to go through it and it prepared me, just practicing every day. And so, going in my junior year, I wasn't recruited very high at all. AAU was something that was just being introduced to me. Didn't know much about it. And I had a team come get me and, sat on the bench for this AAU team. Didn't understand it at the time. Another AAU team came and got me and gave me an opportunity. And it was really then like I started to like make my ascension. I started making a name, but no, I wasn't recruited high yet until after my junior year. That's when it started to prepare for me. So not between sophomore and junior, there wasn't much going on, but after my junior season on into that junior summer was really when I made my biggest jump.
Got you. In today's Time Out message, we got Chucky Robinson.
Basically, I knew my calling card was I can run the floor, like you said, finish around the basket. I didn't have a jump shot. I thought in my mind I was a good passer, so I had that down. I can dribble on a straight line to the basket with the ease.
Right.
So now I had to redefine my game of in college, I shot a little bit 15, 16-foot jumper. So I knew certain things I had to add to my game. So I started working on my game a lot, individual-wise, staying in the gym, working on my 15 to 17-foot jump shot. Going to the basket left hand. So I had to work on some things that, that if you wanted to be the same player that you were in high school, it wasn't going to work at the next level.
Now let's get back to the interview. And who were some people that were trying to get at you, and how and why did you make your decision? Because again, talking to a lot of guests, I asked that question, well, why did you go to A&T? Why did you go to North Carolina? And they said, well, usually I knew someone at the school, or I was comfortable with the environment. It's usually some type of connection that causes the commitment from a student athlete or a school per se. But I'll make a quick joke. For us, the College Charleston, they promised us the whole arena, but we didn't get that until anywho. But go ahead. Why did you make your decision? And who helped you with that?
Yeah, my recruitment was a little different. So I went into my junior summer AAU, and I probably played one of the best games I've ever played in my life, any level. We played against the Charlotte Royals, which is a storied AAU program. I'm sure you've heard of them before.
Right.
They probably have more national championships than anybody. And I got a chance to play against them with a bunch of guys that nobody went to college. I didn't play with any of my high school teammates and none of that. It was just a bunch of guys that worked hard, loved the game. And for whatever reason, I was crazy enough to think we could beat them.
Right.
And we came within, I think we lost by like 5. And we're talking about every single person on this roster playing Power 5. Some of them are lottery picks, like a couple years later. So, I think I had like 40 against them. Ooh. And it was in front of everybody. It was in the open period. It just started. And so every major college coach you could imagine. Remember how we get excited to see those guys?
For sure.
Every single face you ever seen on TV was in that gym that day at Queens College, Charlotte. And they weren't there to see me. I can assure you that.
For sure.
They were there to see that team.
Right.
But I always looked at that as an opportunity. I looked at it and I was so excited to play. And the way I performed, that triggered everything for me. So now, the prep schools are coming in. They're the bigger Power 5s are coming in. Now they're starting to notice me. And but the thing was, my high school team as a junior was the best team I played on in high school. We lost first round. There's a whole backstory to it. We were late to the game, not by our fault. And, we didn't start. There was a whole lot of rhythm off, and we lost in the first round. So that triggered me to really worried about winning a championship my senior year. So I kind of put the recruitment on the back burner until after my senior year, which is unusual. Most people commit like as juniors. Right. I was more concentrating on getting that ring that I felt like we left on the table
for sure
the previous year. So I didn't even get into my recruitment until after we won the state championship.
I got you. And so take us into the recruitment a little bit, because I know you end up at Clemson and then the college. Yeah. What are some recruiting roles and why'd you? Because I mean, coming from North Carolina, everybody was wanting to go to North Carolina. We'll get into that. A lot of situations you like to see these college stories where those state kids didn't get recruited by the state school, so they end up having big wins when they play against them. And you did it at the college, also hitting that big shot against North Carolina. But we'll get into that briefly. But talk about why the decision from to Clemson out of your senior year.
Yeah, so I put off the recruitment to after. So, a couple things happened, and this. There aren't as many scholarships available if you wait,
Right.
But it opens the door for new opportunities of guys who are leaving too. So it's a little bit, here or there. But in my state championship game again, I had a really good guy. I just was always really excited about big games. So right. I broke all the records. I think I had 37, 7, and 7. And, that's the only game they put on TV. They play it here in North and South Carolina. And after that, I went from being, recruited pretty good to I'm now the top unsigned player in the country, or one of them.
Right.
And that just propelled
and DJ,
everything.
I think you're being a little modest right here, but I think you need the audience wants to know how the recruitment process go. Who are some schools? Because if you just saying, hey, look, I came from a small town and I just end up at Clemson, that's not really that would happen. You got to take them through.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I know you can call out some schools. It's fine because they gotta see that. You know how kids are, like they gotta. It's right. Like hearing the tangible things that, oh yeah, these are that school, this is how it's done. So briefly, just a little bit, just give us a little what schools that were recruiting you, and then why did you choose Clemson? And even if Clemson and what other schools choosing you, Clemson is the ACC school, like that's huge. And just coming from a small town, even if it's by default or whatever, and you still had to play and have some skills to make that happen. So just give us a little bit.
Well, you're opening up Pandora's box here a little bit.
Okay, well, let's open it up. Then let's go.
My high school experience wasn't typical. So, you talk about recruiting. I played for a high school coach that I'm not sure his agenda about kids going to college. Like I met a bunch of people in college once I got there, and guys would tell me about their coach taking them to schools and this, that, and the other. I never had any of that.
For sure.
I think I received one letter from him the whole time I was there. Now you'd have to ask him about that and why.
For sure.
But I didn't really know everybody who was recruiting me, because at that time, there was no social media, there wasn't any of that. So exactly. People were they were going through your coach.
Exactly.
And all the messages wasn't getting to me. I found that out later. But, I played so well, to tell the truth. I played so well that schools were going around him to get to me. They were starting to call my house personally now.
For sure.
And so now, my schools, I think I ended up being down to Clemson, Tennessee, Florida, Cal, North Carolina kind of came in at the end talking to me.
Wow.
Not sure what they were going to do. I didn't see any writing on the wall with me playing there. So, my dream school, though, was NC State, believe it or not. They weren't very good. I grew up watching them dominate Valvano in the 80s.
I wanted to be part of that. Monroe. It was Donovan Monroe, Rodney Monroe.
Rodney Monroe, yeah. Fire and Ice, Chris Corciani, Rodney Monroe.
Yeah.
Even before him, David Thompson, Chris Washburn. A lot of them are from my area too. So sure. I wanted to go and turn it around. And they took two of my friends. You probably remember them, C.C. Harrison and Ishua Benjamin.
I love
they were from North Carolina.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were the North Carolina kids, and they took them two instead of me. Les Robinson lives here in Charleston now. I'm not sure if you're aware of
For
that,
sure.
but
Yep.
I,
Yep.
I run into him at Hall sometimes, and I dig into him about passing up on him. I told him he'd still have his job if he'd have made the right choice. so so honestly, my heart was at NC State, which is unusual. I didn't really want to go to North Carolina. I had a cousin who was a superstar running back at the time, Leon Johnson.
Right.
He was pushing for it, but there was no room for me either. Like I was good, but I wasn't on the level of the guys they were
Sure.
getting at that time. You have to
Sure.
be realistic.
For sure.
You have to be
Sure.
realistic.
For sure.
And that's hard to do. It's hard to do when you compete
For
and you
sure.
believe in yourself. But when you look out there and you see Jeff McGinnis and Shaman and Jerry Stackhouse, Rasheed, Vince Carter, Donald Williams, it's going to be hard to crack the lineup, especially when you're a freshman and they didn't play freshmen back then.
Right.
So I was looking at some schools like, maybe sitting out a year possibly, but when you're looking at two, it's a different situation. It's tough. So there's some schools that were in that scenario. So I kind of looked at it like that, like where could I go that I can possibly make an impact right away.
And you chose Clemson, and how was your experience there? And when you, and I wanted the audience to understand this, when you chose Clemson, like I said, you basically chose on the playing time and your opportunity of getting on the floor, which all players should do. But in your calculation, did you consider playing style? Obviously, you were close to home, but did you consider playing style? And if you did, what situation that caused the transfer or caused you to have interest in the transfer? I see you smile, but these are questions that they got a portal. You got a portal that makes it a lot easier. So I ask these questions for athletes so they understand, because the athlete may think of right now, I want to transfer, and hearing this podcast might make them either change the decision or either make them strong in their decision based on how things were. So you choose Clemson based on whatever you base it on, and why didn't it work out?
Well, two things. I picked Clemson because it was only an hour and a half from my house, one. And two, it's in the ACC, which I consider the best basketball conference, hands down, historically, not even close.
For sure.
So it covered the basis of things I want. And number three, Rick Barnes was from close to my hometown. We basically were raised in the same area. He was the coach at the time.
For sure.
So all those things together made it pretty easy for me. Now, you touched on something that kids should look at, and I didn't know at the time. Again, we're talking generational differences here. But I didn't look at playing style the way I should have. So I was looking at Arkansas because I loved the way they played. I don't know if you remember the 40 minutes of hell.
Yeah.
Like they pressed you the whole game.
Korea.
And so I was starting to hear from them a little bit late. And I remember thinking like, man, that's my style, using my athleticism, running through passing lanes, pressing for 40 minutes, a lot of high scoring, not a lot of passing, good scores.
Right.
And I like that style. That probably fit me better. But I went to a school at Clemson, first year head coach. Our talent level not that high. So now we're trying to play games in the high 50s, low 60s, low possession. Really didn't fit my style, at the time. It didn't fit what I did the best. I was a scorer. That's my reputation all through high school, all through most people that meet me.
For sure.
So it didn't fit. And as far as transferring that aspect of it, my freshman year was a little rocky. I'm young, impressionable. Coaches can be really hard on you at that level.
Right.
And to be completely honest, there's probably a level of confidence I lost somewhere in there, because you're scared to make a mistake. You're scared to make a mistake, right? Right. Like if I make a turnover, it takes me out. And we all know you can't play any sport like that. You can't, you can't play that way. And I caught myself doing that. And so when I came back my sophomore year, I put on, I think, 65 pounds of muscle.
Right.
I was in the gym religiously. And I came back just like, I'm going to try to be the most unstoppable force they meet. And I got pretty close to that. And so the minutes just weren't there. I forgot, I look back at it. I think I never played over 15 minutes a game, but I think I might have won 4 or 5 player of the games. You know what I mean? And so for me, I was looking at it like,
Wow.
if I can do this in 15, what can I do in 30?
The most important message to get across to student athletes suffering from mental health issues is that you're not alone. Many student athletes deal with depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and other mental health struggles. If this is the case, speak to someone like a counselor, a parent, a trusted adult, or your fellow teammate. Adults who are supporting a student athlete should be aware of the signs. A student athlete who is experiencing mental health difficulties might have constant fatigue, loss of appetite, mood swings, apathy, or even declining grades and/or social isolation. A student athlete's mental health can be severely affected by an injury. An athlete's entire life becomes about their sport. And when they lose the ability to play, it can take a huge toll mentally. As we continue to reduce the stigma around mental health, hopefully more middle and high school level student athletes will feel confident discussing their health, whether it be mental or physical. The Triple Threat podcast will be adding a psychology aspect in season 2. We will be doing our part to help destigmatize mental health when it comes to student athletes. So subscribe on your favorite podcast listening platform so you never miss an episode. Now let's get back to the interview.
But so I was going to transfer in December. We're speaking about transfer rules. A little different because you got to sit out a year for sure back then.
Right.
So December, I told my parents I wanted to leave, and they gave me the best piece of advice. At the time, I thought it was hard. They said, you started the season with your team, you finished the season with your team. You know what I mean? I don't care what you're going through. And so two sides of that. One, I was disappointed because I wanted to leave and try to do something else. Two, I tell you what, my confidence went out the building because I was like, you know what? I got nothing to lose. And the most dangerous person is somebody with nothing to lose. And so a lot of those player of the games I told you about came in that second part of the year, because I played all out, had nothing to lose, and started to make a name for myself even in a short amount of time. But I just knew the writing was on the wall for me. I spent 2 years there, and just, mentally, I just couldn't do it anymore. There was some things said that, it would be different going forward, and a lot of people get involved. I don't know if you want to talk about that aspect of it. I don't know how deep you're getting into this thing, but there's alumni and all kind of people surrounding these situations that influence everything. So
for sure.
They were trying to get me to stay. Difficult process for me to get out of there, but they finally granted my release. And then it was about choosing other schools. The college was not on my radar, to be completely honest. It was not anything I thought about at first, but they were one of the ones that make the call. I didn't know if you wanted to go into college or not.
Well, let's talk about that transfer right quick. So I think we're in an open gym or something. We're just in the off season. And so I get a call to coach office like, hey, Jamel, can you just come talk to me? I'm like, this is rare. Like, this is not doing the season or anything. So why is he calling me up? So we get in there, and we always had conversations about how I was a combo guard. That I wasn't a point, I wasn't a two, but I was a great defender. So he always threw that at me, like, hey, look, you Anthony is going to start the two, but Shane's a point and Stacy's a two. So he didn't know where to put me. So so he got there, we got the story talking. He's like, well, Jamel, I'm bringing this guy in, Danny Johnson, my 6'4",
in the Brooklyn accent, huh?
From Clemson. He's gonna come in. Another guy, Carl Thomas. Then bringing those two guys in, I'm looking, I'm like, okay, what does that mean? He's like, well, I'm kind of looking at you come off the bench a little bit, kind of playing the two and the point a little bit. You have to really learn the point this summer because I'm like, oh, I see where this is coming. So that was his way of telling, hey, look, we got two major athletes coming in, and we're gonna be really, really good. And when y'all came in, bro, like in the spark y'all have for the team, it set us up a whole another different level. So just talk about that experience, you coming in and what you learned from coach, from Coach Kress as a player, as a coach.
Yeah, the school itself sold me. I've told this story many times, and it's true. The schools are obviously very beautiful. People didn't know about it then; they do now, but they didn't know about it like they do. And the facilities were terrible. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. My high school facilities were better, but I watched you guys play pickup. You may not know this, but I was sitting in that little hallway stretch between the gym and the office, and I was sitting there and I watched y'all play pickup. And I remember after about 5 minutes, I said to myself, these guys could beat us. They got this team right here could come up there to Clemson and beat us. And I did not expect that, to be honest. I did not. I thought I was gonna walk in, average 20, do my thing. Like I thought, how our mind runs.
Sure.
All of us do this.
For sure.
And I thought that I was gonna do it. And then watching y'all play pickup, I was like, hold on a minute. I'm gonna have to earn a spot here. This is not gonna go like I think it's gonna go. But to be honest with you, it excited me.
Sure.
Eddie Fogler was a big part of that, believe it or not, at South Carolina. He
Mm.
called me, but he was very honest. He's like, I can't bring you here because you couldn't compete against BJ anyway, because he's from Columbia. It's just not good for me overall. And I understood that. I understood that. I was like, yeah, he said, even if you beat him out, you can't beat him out,
Sure.
And I was like, I understand. But he talked about the College of Charleston. And I didn't know about it. He's like, man, they got such and such, and he's rattling off y'all's names. And then that with the combination of seeing y'all and Coach Kress, man, and the staff, they just gave me something magical. They were like, hey, man, you could go to another big school, you can see what happens, or do you want to be a part of something magical and bigger than just playing? And I remember that sat on me, and I was like, you know what? Why not, man? Why not partner with these guys and go out here and just cause a rift, like junk up the system a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, put a mid-major on the level where we're not scared of nobody, nowhere, anywhere, park, your place, our place. I want guys that want to get it. And that's exactly who you guys were before I even got here.
For sure. And we had a great, we like you said, we brothers, we love playing together. We learn a lot from each other. And that was a great experience. But we joke a lot about this Coach Kress system, right? How great the system was. And it kind of, we were free, but we still was contained at the same time. And we joke about the transition from, the comfortability, how you played at the next level at Pennsylvania from the USBL. Before we get into that, just tell the audience briefly about the transition as far as, you leaving the College of Charleston and getting to the pro, having an agent, and briefly talk about that transition and some of those things on how you end up in the USBL and end up having a great career overseas, fulfilling out that dream.
It's funny because, we didn't have a lot going on. And again, at that time, we didn't have great individual numbers because we played as a team. We had 5 or 6 guys average double figures.
Yeah, it was like 12, 13, 14, 15.
Yeah, we're all in a row, right? So we didn't have these big numbers at a mid-major. And I think that hurts you as far as like professional aspirations go. So it's interesting. It's funny. And I'm going to bring you into this since you said Pennsylvania. But we get drafted to USBL, as you mentioned. And I look at it as an opportunity again to show what I could do. The interesting part is I get there and I'm with a coach and he's watching me pick up and he's like, why are you doing all this passing and cutting and all this other kind of stuff? I'm like looking at him like, that's what we do. That's what we do. We pass, we cut, we move. He's like, he said, no, son, your talent is scoring the ball. You get the ball, you score. And I remember that because it just kind of freed me, because in college, either college I was at, I never had that. And so I was like, what? You just telling me to
Mm.
play one-on-one basketball? And that was the NBA style at the time. I don't know if you remember. And it freed me. And I'm bringing you into this because I never forget this. We were playing against your team.
Yep.
And I'm on the baseline.
I was a Rick Barry in USP.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I remember I was on the baseline, the three-point line. I jab step, pump fake, jab step, raised up, hit a three in the guy's face. And I could hear you behind me. And I'll never forget this. You go, you looking way too comfortable out there. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. I do remember that. It was just
way too comfortable.
I mean, because we're both rookies. We're both rookies. And I'm like, yo, this guy is taking shots like he been on the team 3 and 4 years, and you're leading the league in scoring. Like you're averaging about what, like 29, something like that.
Yeah, I was averaging quite a bit. No, not quite. I wasn't the highest, but I was like
at least top 3.
Around 18, 19 a game, something like that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
but it was great for being a rookie and just seeing that transition, right? Because we talk about comfortability, taking shots, we wasn't in that type of offense. And now here, 3 months later, you're like, the whole system is going through you. I'm like, and then you got to understand from players that's listening, from a tryout and invitation to training camp, free agent camp, rookie camp, to playing the games and got the ball in your hands. Like, that means you beat out at least 200-300 players to get that nod, to get that green light. And that's huge. So
I will say this though, playing hard, like defensively, what we learned in college gave you the opportunity to get the ball in your hands. You know, you understand what I'm saying? That starts with that. They gotta see you first. A lot of times in a tryout situation, guys try to score their way on the team.
Right.
And that's not how you do it. They're not even gonna look, they already got guys.
Exactly.
But what they will do is if you can have a value to them, and then they see you have that other additional scoring ability, then they start to designate that to you. It's a little different as a pro. So I just played college ball, but I think he saw my skill set within that. And he said, hey, if you don't go one-on-one, I'm going to take you out of the game. And I was like, well, this is completely opposite from what I've been dealing with, So I would throw it to the guys on the block. Just I felt guilty. I'm guilty for taking all these shots. Like, I'm not used to it. But after a while, I just got used to, the professional game and thought processes, managers and presidents and GMs. They see the game completely different than what the college system was when we came out of.
In this time, our message, we got Coach Ben Betts.
In particular, as a head coach, I wanted to make sure, one, that I treated everybody fairly. That's very, very important to me. But also that I interacted with everybody in the same sense where, one, that they understand and know that they have value and that they're important. So, when I got to South Carolina State, there were some really good players that stayed. But also because at the time, we were dealing with some APR issues when I got the job at South Carolina State.
Right.
So I had to take on some walk-ons.
Right.
And those walk-ons helped me win, helped us win. So they were really, really valuable. But from the on down the line, it was important. That's just the way I am and how I feel about it. But everybody's important. Everybody has a purpose. Everybody has value.
Now let's get back to the interview. And what you're telling athletes that, college, transition and thought process is totally different in the professional level. Because in a collegiate level, out of the 10 players on the court at the time, you probably got about 5 or 6 good players. You know what I mean? Then this goes up level. But in the professional level, it's all 10. So really all 10 got special gifts that they got to really put together under that situation in that game, in that game mode and be effective. And like I said, I was giving you kudos, and you did all that comfortably when I first saw you up there. So you played in the USPL in Pennsylvania, and then overseas was the next step. Took us how to happen with the, because I think I tell my players all the time, I think you, as far as a friend, is not all friends, players do that. Like you gave Brian Elphis, my information. He called, he tried his best to help me out, but he just couldn't. I didn't have the numbers and didn't have the marketing numbers to be, effective. But I appreciate you for, allowing Brian to help me out in that situation. And that's another thing too about agents is so important. USBL to overseas. How was that transition?
I think we all, coming from a mid-major situation where there weren't many professional players, we didn't have that pipeline to the top agents. We didn't have a pipeline to being in the right places at the right time. And I'm not sure if that was related to the coaches not understanding what needed to be done, or if we just weren't respected like that on a mid-major level. I don't know. I can't speak on that because I don't know the answer.
Right.
But yes, you're completely right. Your representation is almost as important as your game.
For sure.
And I know that says a lot, but I obviously Brian's a great guy. He's a friend to this day, but he was a lawyer trying to be an agent at the time.
Right.
He was new himself. So we were growing together. Like it
Sure.
wasn't even like he was established. I was trying to put him on and he was trying to put me on.
For sure.
Nobody really wanted me like that. Nobody was trying to represent me like that, but we were just kind of going against the grain with each other. We were trying to build our own thing together. And so after USB, I was in Bridgeport, Connecticut, by the way, not Pennsylvania.
Right.
But, transitioning after that, doing that work in USB.
DJ, before you get into that, tell our audience, because, like you said, you did put him on, because you put him in arenas. He was able to the lily pad and jump off situations. So before you get into that transition, talk about his clients that he have right now, Brian Elphis.
Yeah, now he represents a lot of the big coaches. He got out of players. I think we wore him out. Those late night calls of all this stuff he had to take care of. Yeah, he ended up representing some big time guys, Kawhi Leonard being probably the top of the list, and others, man. And he kind of worked his way through the system. And that's why we're friends to this day.
For sure.
Because we put each other on, Exactly. I think in his mind, he wished he could have got me higher, along the totem pole. I think he just think I deserved it, but he just didn't have the power and leverage the power brokers have in the NBA. And that's what people don't understand about the business of the game, that there's a lot of moving pieces that have nothing to do with the game itself. And you're better off educating yourself and learning how those pieces move to how you go along. I didn't learn that till late. So I kind of knocked myself out the box, but, I don't regret it because, now, I have some friends and other player teammates I've had that had some success. My agent, like you said, Brian, he represents a lot of the big coaches and GMs in the NBA now. So a lot of people grew from that one situation. So I'm not regretful of it at all. I'm just happy that I got an opportunity. I just got an opportunity and I ran with it.
For sure. All right. I just want people to understand the importance of that and how we all put each other on in certain situations. So go ahead.
Yeah.
From Connecticut to the overseas.
Yeah. So, I get out of USBL, and, I obviously had a great year. We lost in the championship, but our rookie of the year and a lot of other stuff. And here's where basketball gets interesting again. I had some teams say they were going to draft me in the CBA and the IBL, I watched the drafts come and go and not selected any round. Mm-hmm. And I remember how it made me feel. And you're very familiar with this because I know how you built. I took that as like, I don't know, man. I took it like as I was taking no prisoners at that point. At that point, I was just mad at the whole situation. So I ended up getting a tryout over in London where we got to play in France with against a couple teams without signing. It's kind of outside their country, so you could do it. And we so happened we played against the IBL All-Star team comprised of all these ex-NBA guys. Bernie Bickerstaff is the coach. And long story short, man, I think I had a 40-point game against them, and we beat them. And if you know me well, I was talking the whole way to the bench, to Bernie, because at this point I felt disrespected in my game, and I was letting anybody and everybody know it. I was like, until you do right by me, I'm gonna kill everybody you see. Basically, that's what I was on, and that propelled me to being with Bernie in St. Louis in the IBL, which is a first year league. They paid pretty good. You know, Bernie had just got fired as the GM and head coach for the Wizards. Guy I respected, one of the first black head coaches in the NBA. So, you know, I had a ton of respect for him. Even though we were competitors, I talked crazy to him during the games. But he appreciated that my fire and passion. And I think that's what he saw in me. And he brought me back to the States to play in the IBL. And that really set me up for everything else that kind of came after.
For sure. And Brian helped, and the agent helped facilitate a lot of those things overseas as well. How long was your career per se, you know, total after college, you would say? And what before we get into that, what for the audience, what are some of the things that you can say you learned from playing overseas? You know what I'm saying? Because some of the difference with food, language barriers, what some things that you had to adjust to and learn from that experience?
I probably did a poor job at that the first, I'd say 3 or 4 years. I just didn't feel like I belonged in Europe. I got an opportunity to play in NBA summer leagues. I went to camp with the Knicks, and I got to see myself against the best. And I feel like my numbers spoke for themselves. So I probably didn't do a very good job at first, you know, because I just was reluctant to be there. You know, it's my own fault, nobody's fault, but I just was kind of reluctant, you know, I just kind of showing up, doing my job, not really absorbing myself into my environment like I should.
Right.
But after about 4 years, 5 years, you know, you get to be about 25, 26, and you realize that NBA window is closed pretty much. You know, to be there long term, it had to be a crazy string of events and luck to happen. And I just knew it wasn't that. So then my mind changed to absorb into my situation, you know, learning to be comfortable where I was and absorbing my environment and actually taking in all these beautiful things I was getting to see in the world, man. I mean, the salary is one thing, but the experiences are even more valuable than that, you know? So, and I was starting to understand that. And in that way, I even became a better player over in Europe because I committed to it. You know, I finally said, you know, this is what I'm going to do. You're talking about differences. Once I changed my mind to that, you know, I absorbed myself in the culture. I started eating their food and trying their cultural norms and this, that, and the other. So I started educating myself, I guess you could say, past the small town kid from North Carolina, you know, opening my mind to what the world had to offer. Because I started to know that, you know, this ain't gonna last forever too. You know, this is something that started dawning on me. Like, this is not gonna last long. So enjoy the moment, enjoy where you are. And I think that transition, it's about 25 or 26. When I transitioned from, all right, I'm not going to be a 10-year NBA player. It's not going to happen. So my next level was what? And it was going to Europe, getting everything I could out of it. I'd won everything in the States that I could, you know, CBA, MVP, you know, MVPs in every league. So there was nothing really left for me to do here stateside. So I made that commitment, and I just enjoyed the back end, and I almost played 11 years to answer your question, almost 11 years. So, you know, I kind of absorbed it the last 5-6 years of my career.
For sure. And like you said, you came back and you got your degree. Talk to the audience about how important that was and what pivot that, like what changed, you know, because we all sit in the house one day, you know what, man, I got to go finish. I got to go do that. But it's a process. It's going to the school, going online, making your calls, getting your resources, signing up, figuring out this. It's a process. So what triggered that process and how important that was in life to finish that? Because, you know, athletes that, like I said, we all have dreams and aspirations, but because of the workload and because of the schedule, we don't sometimes go back. Why was that important of doing that, and how beneficial, you know, it has been personally and professionally?
Well, the number one reason I can tell you right now is my mother. She had no problem with me going to chase my dream, but it came with a promise. And you laughing because you understand what I'm talking about. For sure. She had no problem with me chasing my dreams because she's my mother and she loves me. She encouraged me to do, you know, hope. Without hope in life, you have nothing. For sure. Right. So she wanted me to do that. But the promise was the first thing I did was finish my degree. It came with that caveat. So I'll start there. But to the kids who are involved in sports that are listening to this podcast, let me tell you this. Take care of your business while you're there. To me, I consider it a failure, even though I went back and got it. I'm proud of myself for doing that, and I got my master's. But I should have took care of my business while I was there, while those people were invested in me and doing what I needed to do. And that's where I came up short. And I would tell any student athlete, listen, don't forget what you're really here for. You can get distracted. You can get caught up in what you're doing. Other people will make you feel like those things are more important, but your future is more important than even all of that. And you don't always understand that as an 18, 19, 20-year-old. And so I would tell them, hey, you got somebody paying for your school and paying for these opportunities. Take advantage of them the same way you're taking advantage of your sport.
For sure. And DJ, transferring to life after college, working with College of Charleston. I think your grandfather did the same thing with the Gamecocks.
South Carolina. Mm-hmm.
Talk about that transition in life and, playing the game. And now you can talk about the game. You have to be very, very, very educated, not as a person, but just to be able to see the game and articulate that for fans that can't see it. Like, that's a skill in itself. And we all know how you love to talk, you know what I mean? So making a living and you do it well, so talk about that, how that experience has helped you and what joy that's brought to you. Because I can tell the intensity in your voice. And when I hear you talk about it and do it, it's you sound like a natural.
That opportunity just kind of came about, piggybacking off your point about me. They had a spot open down at the school. And the question was, who knows a little bit about basketball, an alum, and talks a lot? And so I was the unanimous choice. That's what I'm known for. But you're right. My grandfather was the voice of the Gamecocks for 43 years. The one thing about moving around as much as I did in my career is it put me in a room with multiple Hall of Fame minds in basketball. So give me an example. So take like a Tim Duncan, who played for Popovich's entire career. Sure. The problem with that is he only has his perspective. But if you jump around as much as I did, you playing with, I can't tell you how many head coaches in college and NBA that I've been under. And so when you pull from all these different sources, you really get intelligent. Okay, I wish I'd have known it when I was 20. It helped me, but still the experience of learning from so many different, not even just here, but in Europe. Obviously, the European game has taken over our game. Let's be honest. Their style of play has taken over the NBA style. So I kind of have all these different perspectives, which help me identify things that I wouldn't be able to do otherwise if I didn't have those experiences.
For sure. And that's those using those transferable skills to be effective. So again, big ups to that, big guy, and I think you're doing a good job with that. Student athletes, what do you think is the biggest I'll say missing point with student athletes today? Because we see, yes, a lot of skill, high jumping, but there's the IQ is just not there. I think and I think that's overlooked because of not blaming AAU and playing games, but I think more of the playing games and performance versus the skill development and the mental concentration of the game. What's your take on that? Frame that for me.
People are probably not going to want to hear this one, but it's just my take on it. I saw the European invasion of our game when I spent time in Europe. And I mean that because if you look at our system of sports here in America, right? Most of us are taught by volunteer coaches all the way up until you're like, almost high school, whatever. So you're taught by these people who are just committing to you, which is great. Don't get me wrong. Like, they're taking time out of their schedule. But each person's level of knowledge is different. Some have 0, some have 50, some have 80, some have 0. But in Europe, the club system they have is ingenious. And this is why you're seeing so many ready-made players come from there, because they're under an umbrella of the pro club, the school, and those kids are constantly taught by pros very young, very young. So their idea about maturity, game understanding, skill, all being taught by professionals from when they're 4 or 5 years old.
For sure.
And so people can't understand why they caught us. And some would say maybe passed us in some elements of the game. I saw that coming a long time ago, only because I saw the way their system was. And I know that's uncomfortable for people to hear.
For sure.
But I think if you're being honest, you can see how it's affected everything. It affected the change. Like being a good athlete is not good enough to be a basketball player. Like great athlete does not translate to great basketball player. And that's what you got to understand. You know, maybe in football, they'll find a spot for you, but in basketball, there's very few slots. So because you can jump over the rim does not mean you're going to ever be a basketball player. And the European style that they taught over there, I think was the right way, like teaching shooting at all positions, passing all positions, dribbling all positions, spacing all positions. And so I just really think that we could take something from that. However, we need to reorganize that. You're a big part of that with the DAE Foundation, but reorganizing that in a way that kids are getting to that earlier, I would say is the problem with how our youth system is set up. Again, that's just my opinion. Not very popular, but I think there's truth in it.
That's a great look. And now what coaches can take from that is that positionless basketball. Don't put that if we're in 5th grade, don't put a 5-man in the 5 to see a little bit taller than the other guards. You know what I mean? So that's an easy fix if everybody can hear that concept. That's a profound theory right there we just said. And it's a quick changer. But if not, like you said, that's why a lot of players are being stuck because they're positioned. You know what I mean? It's a positionless type atmosphere right now. And all the big man needs to bring the ball up as well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you know, we all remember. I remember the biggest butt whooping I ever took was over there. We were playing against and I know basketball players would love this. You know, we're playing against, I think it was a Croatian national team. They were breaking up between Serbia and all that, the war, but they had Vlade Divac, Peja Stojakovic, Drazen Petrovic.
Wow.
I mean, we're talking, and their ball movement and skill, the way they can move in unison. And if you're a basketball player at the highest level, you know the one shot that you give up if you play perfect D is the corner 3.
Every time.
Now, Jamel, I want you to imagine Peja Stojakovic in one corner and Drazen Petrovic in the other. Dude, it was like I got beat by 50. I got, you know, full transparency, I got thrown out of the game because I couldn't take it. So I threw a couple flagrant fouls in there because I couldn't take getting beat by 50. But the movement of the ball and the bodies and the decisions were on another level. And that's when I knew.
You out. The defense can't move faster than the ball.
Yeah,
you gotta help somewhere.
Yeah.
And nobody making threes because you're like, you know what? The layup is right here, but I'll just give a high percentage shot. But that's not really a high percentage shot. When they shooting that sucker.
Yeah, it's like a layup for those two guys. It's a layup. You know, it was to the point to where, you know, you see the rotation, you look and you see who got that swing. And I would just put my hand underneath the net. Like, I know they're going to make it.
Right.
I know they're going to make it. Like, so it was then, that was probably the game where I knew that European system and the way they were going to catch up to us at some point in America. I knew that then. And it did. Remember, we lost in the Olympics.
Sure.
Not too much further after that. So I could see that coming. And so for you, like guys with the foundations and guys that teaching kids, positionless basketball, man, we pigeonholed kids for too many years, man, and hurt them by doing it. So, you know, every kid needs how to dribble, pass, shoot, understand spacing, understand screens, understand, like, what does it hurt for all of them to know that? And so now I think coaches who give that are ahead of the curve of the guys that still going guys and girls are going old school.
That's a good point. And before we get into our oatmeal and closing in our oatmeal recipe, I want to get your input on something that's been in the talk with sports the last, year or two, and that's mental health. And we look at it as an athlete as being tough, but think about when you were injured with your back injury or injured from a leg injury, and think about the mental focus you got to think about of losing your playing time, death in the family, your grades not going well. I mean, it's a lot of things that, you know, we deal with that really we don't talk about. What's your take on the mental health with student athletes and athletes today?
You know, I'm 45 years old, almost 46, so this is not coming from a younger perspective, and I need to get better at this. So in our day, you know this, we were taught to just put your head down and deal with it,
For sure.
right? Put your head down and deal with it. It just is what it is. Life is not fair. I mean, I heard every lesson you could hear in my home. So, you know, mental health, addressing it wasn't part of our generation. So
For sure.
would you agree with that? Would
I
you
agree
agree with
with that.
that statement?
Yep.
Right. So now we're in this new world now where it's important. And I do think it's important. You know, for me, I'm having trouble identifying the gray area. So the gray area is where, you know, I think this is a constant in life. The higher the salary, the more the pressure.
For
That's
sure.
just kind of what comes with it. And so I don't know where that stops and starts. And you also are able to help players because it's true. We all struggle with sometimes a lot of us is not even just basketball, it's the neighborhoods we come from, it's the things we saw growing up. There's other parts of trauma in our mind that a lot of us put to the back of my mind. I'll speak for myself.
For sure.
I put in the back of my mind trauma, major trauma, that a lot of us see that a lot of other people don't.
For sure.
And so it's that, and it's the basketball or whatever sport you're involved in as well. So I know there's a market there. I know there's something there to be done that can help, you know, maybe even it's a sounding board, or maybe if it's getting into something you've never addressed. But at the same time, how you balance that against, you know, if you're in the NBA and somebody's paying you $30 million a year, they're not really big on hearing about how you feel that day. You know, it's just, that's what comes with the job.
Right.
So that balance, that gray area, I'm having trouble with that, identifying where that is. Maybe you've got a better perspective on that than I do. You work with younger kids than I do. So you probably are better to.
No, I totally agree with you. But, you know, when I'm talking about, you know, right now I'm in school right now, being getting a licensed counselor, and talk about dealing with athletes, you know, as far as game preparation, post game, not really the mental stuff, but the emotional feelings that can result into the mental stress. You know what I mean? Injury, death, situations like that. But it's something that obviously, if it's being talked about more, I think more athletes are coming out. And sometimes we quick to label athletes with mental disabilities when, you know, because that's just easy to say. So I totally feel with you when you say that. It is a gray area, and that's why I'm talking to different people, just trying to get a feel for what their take is, so I can, like you said, get a better, well-rounded idea of how it should be.
Definitely a need there. I'm glad to hear you doing that because it's a real thing. I don't want to discard that. You know, I don't think the way we were taught is the right way either. You know, I do think there's something in there. Now, the problem with America, sometimes we swing the pendulum too far one way.
Exactly.
And so it's always the middle, you know. And so if you're able to identify what that is, I think a lot of things can be accomplished in that arena.
And I think it's just, you know, basically case by case situation, not really a one size
Yes.
fit all situation.
Correct.
He made a name for himself as a star for the College of Charleston basketball teams in the mid to late 90s. And now Jermel President is doing what he can to make sure that the Charleston area kids have a chance to succeed on the court and in life.
So I want to, you know, give some of that back to the community as well. After college and after playing professionally, I started the DAE Foundation just to be that wealth of knowledge to the kids in the community and parents as well.
College of Charleston Hall of Famer Jermel President said he saw a need for this while he was in school. So he founded the nonprofit DAE Foundation. And its philosophy for success is based on what he calls his oatmeal recipe.
Let's go and finish together.
Basically teaches the game of basketball, focusing on skills development, nutrition, and education. Not only SAT, ACT type stuff, but education for parents in how to navigate through the different levels of athletics.
So Danny, in closing, we created something called oatmeal recipe, man, which is skill development, education, and nutrition. And I think through any profession in life, that's huge for the development and sustainability. Even with athletes, skill development, we talk about that, how important skill development is. Education, just knowing how to, just driving the ball when it's 7 and 10 team fouls instead of shooting a 3-point shot. That's education. And then the nutrition, how important that is. So I want to give those 3 things, get your input right quick before we close out, and talk about skill development, how important that is to athlete, and not just an athlete, in the profession, and how do you apply it to your everyday life?
Yeah, I mean, all the lessons we learned in sports are very transferable. I mean, they work in just about everything in life. Is just about figuring out how to do it.
For sure.
With skill development, here's what I can tell athletes or career, centers, people who want to grow in their career. You should never be comfortable in where you are. Learn how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And what I mean by that is that you're never good enough. You're never at your highest peak. You're never everything you can be. Like, you always have to work toward that. That never stops. Every day that you're blessed, a day on earth, your goal is to be better than you were the day before. And it doesn't matter what you're involved in. You always seek out. I mean, with the internet now, we didn't have that. There's all this access to information and new ways of doing things that are better than what it was before. Things improve, right, over time.
Right.
So, you have, it takes you as a person doing the work to make sure that from a development standpoint, you're staying on par with everybody else. That's your responsibility.
Sure.
I tell that to my kids all the time. Like, I can push you, but what happens when I'm not there?
Exactly.
So it has to be you. It has to be your philosophy in life. And that's what I have to say about skill development. Education, I mean, man, you're talking about it yourself. You're talking about getting your counseling degree. I went back and got my master's in public administration. I think that's a thing that you do every day. I don't think it stops necessarily. I think too many of us settle in life. We get into this role in life. We kind of get comfortable and we ride it out. I've chosen not to do that. I've chosen to always challenge myself, because you find yourself being more productive and you find yourself being a better person. And for young people, it keeps you out of trouble, because I tell you what, if you're busy working on your craft and busy working on your school and busy working on yourself, you ain't got time to get in trouble.
Exactly.
So you might as well use the positive aspect of it. And nutrition. I think these kids, man, I mean, just listen to the best in the game. Tom Brady, LeBron James, Russell Wilson. They spend $1 million a year on their body. $1 million a year. Sure. That statement alone should let you know how they are and why Tom Brady can play till he's 45 and LeBron can play till he's 37, and how Russell Wilson can play until he's probably going to be 40 or so before he gets out. Is because what you put in your body is what comes out. And again, we didn't know that much about that. That was not something that was readily available in our generation. But now they can make close connections to food and brain activity, food and muscle development, and just diet and water, how important water is to you, like all these things, man. So I feel like you have an obligation, not as an athlete, but as a human being, to always strive to be better in all those areas, not just one, but all areas. And then just make yourself a better overall person, not just in sports, but in your career and with your personal life and everything.
For sure. But DJ, man, that concludes our interview for the day, man. I appreciate that. You said a lot of good gems that I know that'd be helpful to the audience, coaches, players, families, the whole nine. So appreciate your time today. And thanks as always for being a guest.
No problem. I got a question for you though.
Yes, sir.
What did you think about my take on the European club system compared to what we have here?
I think you're absolutely dead on. I think, and you can see from the games from the European players that's in the NBA right now, how the rotation and the plays kind of goes around that. You know what I'm saying? You got the 6'11", 6'9", bringing the ball up, shooting threes. So you're absolutely right. And then before what happened? What's the team that played last year? Chicago, Loyola, Chicago, something like that.
Yeah, Loyola. Yeah.
When that big was on the top of the key, it opens the hole up for drives. because now you don't have
Right.
the bigs in the hole no more. They on top of the key shooting threes. That whole the paint looks like a empty can.
Right.
So that's going to create
Yeah.
a whole lot of baseline drives, a whole lot of offensive, rebounds and putbacks just on those shots alone. So yeah, I totally agree with you, and that taught me something today when you said that about the transition. It's a huge transition, and it's a huge invasion. And I think we're behind the European game, and we have to get caught up because now we were just relying on athleticism, jumping, but when you
Right.
passing and cutting and getting face cut,
Mhm.
that can be a huge deal. Those extra points add up over a period of time.
Well, we also are older too, so like we love watching Jordan and the high flyers and the highlight plays, but that don't win championships, right?
Exactly.
That doesn't win championships. But my favorite player in the league to watch by far now is the Joker. Man, watching that dude play, that dude, man, slowest dude on the floor, can't jump over $1, but gives people 30, 20, and 12 like it ain't nothing, dude.
Exactly.
Like it ain't nothing. And the way he does it, he expends so little energy to do it. Like I just watch him and I'm amazed by his skill set. Does that make sense? I'm just like, this dude, he only has one guy that can guard him, Anthony Davis. And that's only because Anthony Davis is 7 foot and
Exactly.
a guard. So he's comfortable. Yeah, he can't shoot over him. So that's the only guy in the league that can even offset it. It's just AD. But outside of that, everybody's at his mercy, bro. Like he do what he want to do out there. I'm like, this dude, oh my God.
Totally agree, man. Totally agree.
Yeah. Who's yours now?
I don't really watch it that much, but I gotta go with your boy from the Suns, the point guard. Booker. I like Booker.
Devin Booker.
I like Devin.
Yeah.
You remind you a little bit, but I like.
A little bit.
Like,
a little bit. Yeah, I can see that.
Got that
He's
mid-range. You know what I'm saying? He a dog a little bit too. He get to the cup. He got hops.
You know his dad.
Huh?
You know his dad.
Who?
You know who his dad is? His dad played at Missouri, Melvin Booker. You don't remember Melvin Booker?
I didn't know that. Yeah.
That's his dad. That's his pops.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, I know you know his name because Melvin used to get down.
I didn't know
Melvin used to get down in Missouri. Remember, you know what I'm talking about? The guard?
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah, that's his dad. That's his daddy. So, his mom, he lived somewhere else. And then he told his mom when he was like in the 9th, 10th grade, he wanted to be big time. So he moved to Mississippi to be with Melvin. And they said Melvin put him through it. Put him through it.
You can tell. You can tell.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, hey, man, it's good talking to you.
You too, man. And this is off. I'm gonna close this out, but I'm gonna call you right quick. So there it goes, guys. Another one in the books. I want to thank Danny Johnson for coming on and giving us his wealth of knowledge to our audience, students, families, on how to be an effective student athlete. His trials and tribulations from high school to college, and then making a drastic change from Clemson to the college. And as a result, we have huge success in our student athlete. Don't forget to subscribe to our Triple Threat podcast on your favorite listening platform. We are live on Apple, Google, Spotify, or anywhere else you listen to your podcast. That's Triple Threat, spelled 3-RIPLE, 3HREAT. Triple Threat Podcast. We'll be right back.
What Jermel is doing with the DAE Foundation and the approach he's taking to help develop young athletes, first of all, getting them prepared from the academic standpoint, which, as you know as well as I do, Bobby, that's the most important element, to try to get them to eat healthy, to be able to train properly, to get the proper education, and then hopefully for those who are talented enough to have a chance to move on to perhaps even get a free education by going off to college. But I love what Jermel is doing. It's a wonderful program. Hopefully more people in the community will get behind it, and some of the businesses involved as well, to help sponsor this program, because these are the kind of things that every community needs, looking out for the best interest of the youth. The future of this country is in our youth, and everything that we can do to help prepare them better for that is absolutely wonderful, and I can't express adequately enough my admiration and respect for what Jermel is doing, and hopefully he'll get a lot of help from a lot of people.
You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Jermel President and on Twitter at President Jermel. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast as I'll be bringing you a new interview every month.